Petro Poroshenko, who won the May 25, 2014 presidential election, was a Ukrainian oligarch and emerging conglomerate who also supported the Maidan Revolution protests.
Я думаю, що переконливу підтримку під час цих виборів отримали три, можливо, найважливіших речі. Річ перша. Більше 90% українців, які взяли участь в голосуванні, рішуче підтримали соборну Україну. Єдину, соборну, не федеративну, а унітарну державу, яка сьогодні продемонструвала і отримала квіток довіри українського народу. Ще раз, і за це я дуже дякую, бо це є принциповий, базовий пункт моєї президентської програми.
Well, it is a great pleasure for me to have the opportunity to have my first extended meeting with President-elect Poroshenko and to hear about his plans for a peaceful and prosperous Ukraine.
Poroshenko met with Obama in Warsaw on June 4 before the presidential inauguration. 2 days prior to this, an attack by the Ukrainian Air Force on the Luhansk urban area in the Donbass region took place.
Are you aware of the numbers that were killed as a result of the bombardment of the Ukrainian Air Force?
We have seen a range of numbers. Yes, we've seen a range of numbers.
Okay. Can you share with us these numbers?
I don't have any to confirm for you. There's a range of reports out there, Saeed. Do we have any? Ukraine?
Jen Psaki was still the State Department spokesperson in 2014. On June 7, Poroshenko was inaugurated as president. Despite the transition from the interim government, acting President Turchinov became chairman of the Verkhovna Rada and acting Prime Minister Yatsenyuk remained prime minister. Furthering the pro-Western, anti-Russian, nationalist policy and pushing pro-Russian groups into the Donbass region. Biden was also present at the presidential inauguration. Despite a temporary ceasefire between June and August 2014, fighting intensified and the Ukrainian military succeeded in significantly reducing the territory under the control of pro-Russian forces. Already the anti-Ukrainian government movement had disappeared in Odessa and Kharkiv, and Russian speakers living in Ukraine had limited places to live unless they abandoned the Russian language. Igor Girkin, who organized the armed forces of the Donetsk People's Republic, urged Russian military intervention. He said that the withdrawal was caused by a combination of the Donetsk irregular forces' lack of combat experience and difficulties in recruiting local resident soldiers. The Russian side was negative about military action by the regular army. However, the pro-Russian groups went on the offensive at the end of August after Russian paramilitary groups were allowed to cross the border in support of supplies. A meeting of representatives of Ukraine, Russia, and the US, established in June to facilitate conflict resolution and dialogue, took place on August 26.
Сегодня в Минске, безусловно, решается судьба мира и судьба Европы. Именно так я оцениваю потенциал нашей встречи. Мы должны вместе найти единственное правильное решение, от которого зависит ни много ни мало – мир на континенте. Цель моего нынешнего визита в Минск – сделать все возможное, чтобы прекратить кровопролитие и дать возможность начать сложный процесс поиска политического компромисса.
Доброй ночи. Говорили о необходимости скорейшего прекращения кровопролития, о необходимости перехода к политическому урегулированию всех проблем, всего комплекса проблем, с которыми Украина столкнулась на юго-востоке страны. Россия со своей стороны будет делать все для этого мирного процесса. Если он начнется, а на наш взгляд, этот процесс нужно начать как можно быстрее.
Western officials described this new offensive as a stealth invasion by the Russian Federation. And on August 28, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko stated that the invasion of Russian forces has taken place. On September 5, a document agreeing to a cessation of fighting in the Donbass region was signed in Minsk, Belarus. It is called the Minsk Protocol and was developed by a liaison group of Ukraine, Russia, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It consisted of 12 items, and it was announced that several more memorandums of understanding would be signed on September 19. However, this first ceasefire agreement was to fail. This is the original text of the Minsk Protocol. It is prepared in Russian. The text of the protocol consists of the following 12 items. 1. Ensure an immediate ceasefire between the two countries. 2. Ensure monitoring and verification of the ceasefire by the US. 3. Decentralization of power, including the adoption of the law of Ukraine on the temporary order of local self-government in certain districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. 4. Ensuring permanent monitoring and verification by the US of the Ukrainian-Russian border by establishing a security zone on the border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. 5. Immediate release of all hostages and illegally detained persons. 6. A law preventing the prosecution and punishment of persons in connection with incidents occurring in Donetsk Oblast and some areas of Luhansk Oblast. 7. Continue comprehensive national dialogue. 8. Take steps to improve the humanitarian situation in the Donbass. 9. Ensure early local elections in accordance with the law of Ukraine on the temporary order of local self-government in certain districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. 10. To withdraw illegal armed groups, military equipment, fighters and mercenaries from the territory of Ukraine. 11. Adopt a program of economic recovery and reconstruction in the Donbass region. 12. Provide personal security for the participants in the talks. The following measures are to be included in the Ukrainian law on temporary order of local self-governance in particular districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. Freedom from punishment, harassment, and discrimination of persons connected with the events that took place in particular districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. Right of language self-determination. Participation of local self-government in the appointment of the heads of prosecutors' offices and courts in the particular districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. The possibility for central executive bodies to conclude agreements with relevant local authorities on economic, social, and cultural development of particular districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. The state will provide support for the socio-economic development of particular districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. Assistance from central executive bodies for cross-border cooperation by particular districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts with regions of the Russian Federation. The freedom to create people's militia units by decision of local councils to maintain public order in particular districts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. The powers of local council deputies and officials, elected in early elections, appointed by the Verkhovna Rada according to this law, cannot be prematurely terminated. This document was signed by Swiss diplomat and OSCE representative Heidi Tagliavini, former President of Ukraine July 1994 to January 2005 and Ukrainian representative Leonid Kuchma, Russian ambassador to Ukraine and Russian representative Mikhail Zurabov, separatist leader Alexander Zaharchenko and Igor Plotnitsky. The ceasefire was frequently broken by both sides in the 2 weeks immediately following the signing of the protocol, but talks continued. During these talks, on September 14, U.S. Senator John McCain visited Kiev to appeal for support in the fight against Russia.
I have come to Kiev to show America's support for Ukraine's struggle and to urge my government and the world to do more to support this country, to urgently provide defensive weapons, intelligence, and other assistance that can help Ukrainians defend their sovereign country, and to impose truly crushing sanctions on Russia.
The situation is very similar to that of 2022. The U.S. appeals for support for continued fighting in Ukraine and condemnation and sanctions against Russia, but does not move to cooperate in the ceasefire talks. On September 19, the Ukrainian government and pro-Russian rebels agreed to a memorandum of understanding on a peace plan for the eastern conflict. The 9-point deal includes setting up a 30 km 19-mile buffer zone, a ban on overflights of part of eastern Ukraine by military aircraft and the withdrawal of foreign mercenaries on both sides. This issue of foreign mercenaries is, in fact, reported to have involved volunteers from quite a few countries on both sides. The pro-Russian groups include not only Russian paramilitaries, but also defectors and deserters from the Ukrainian military and Ukrainian police, as well as volunteer soldiers from France, Germany, the United States, Italy, Poland, Romania, Serbia, Spain, Turkey, etc. On the Ukrainian side, volunteers participated in the Donbass Battalion, the Azov Battalion, the Kharkiv Battalion, and others, some of which are known to belong to the right sector. They come mainly from Belarus, Georgia, Russia, the United States, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Poland, Spain, the Czech Republic, the United Kingdom, Croatia, Italy, and Canada. The ceasefire was repeatedly broken because the fighting on the front lines was between extremists, between far-right nationalist groups and separatist armed groups, rather than between the military. Soon after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, the Second Donetsk Airport battle broke out on September 28. As of May, Donetsk Airport had been retaken by the Ukrainian side. The battle lasted until January 21, 2015, when the separatist forces were victorious, crushing the remaining Ukrainian military units. In the meantime, however, the ceasefire agreement of the first Minsk Accords had been completely annulled. The Minsk Agreement, commonly known as Minsk II, was a ceasefire agreement signed between Ukraine and Russia on February 11, 2015, in Minsk, Belarus, under the supervision of the US and mediated by France and Germany. It is intended to be a ceasefire based on the Minsk Protocol. President Putin's goal in concluding the Minsk Agreement was to have certain regions within Ukraine granted a high degree of autonomy to Donetsk-Lugansk. President Poroshenko's political objective is to make Ukraine a unified state, and independence for the Donbass will not be granted. The agreement was reached because President Putin was not in favor of secession. In fact, President Putin did not respond to the request for state recognition of the Donetsk and Lugansk republics, which declared independence in April 2014, until February 21, 2022. Indeed, pro-Russian and separatist leaders were opposed to the ceasefire agreement. Speaking from Minsk, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the agreement was partly down to pressure Putin put on pro-Russian separatists in the rest of east of Ukraine. French President François Hollande has warned that there is still much work to be done on this agreement. There is a glimmer of hope here, Merkel said. We have an in-depth implementation plan from the Minsk Agreement but, of course, concrete steps have to be taken and we will still face major obstacles. But, on balance, I can say that what we have achieved provides significantly more hope than if we had achieved nothing. Putin said the truce would come into effect on Sunday, February 15 and that the withdrawal of heavy artillery would take place over the 2 weeks that follow. Fighting largely subsided after the ceasefire went into effect on February 15, 2015, at 0:00 Eastern European Time. However, shelling and fighting continued in the heavily contested area of Debaltseve, and fighting continued between Donetsk forces and the Ukrainian Azov battalion in villages near Mariupol. On February 18, Ukrainian troops retreated from Debaltseve. The week after the pro-Russian occupation, fighting in the conflict zone ended. As specified in Minsk II on February 24, Donetsk and Lugansk forces began withdrawing their artillery from the front lines, and on February 26 Ukraine also withdrew its artillery. Ukraine reported no casualties between February 24 to 26. The Minsk Protocol was agreed to with an emphasis on Ukrainian sovereignty and territory. The pro-Russian factions in the Donbass region and the Ukrainian government were the parties to the conflict, and the fate of the agreement was left solely to them.